Alright, in this beginner tutorial, I'm going to show you how to make Flappy Bird in 3D inside of Unity. So if you want to start your game development journey and want to start by making a simple but cool game, then this is for you, right? So stick around. Also, this tutorial is perfectly compatible with Unity 6 and the brand new input system. Alright, so let's get started. Okay, so let's create a project. I'm going to select Universal 3D. My version is 6.3.8. You can follow along with another version, but if you want to follow along exactly in this video, then you might want to select this version. And let's click Create Project. Okay, so we're project created. I'm going to head over to this README thing, click remove README asset. All right, proceed. So let's get started now. Let's create our player. So I'm going to head over here to our hierarchy, right click, 3D object, sphere. So we're going to make it a sphere for now. I'm going to call this bird or player. Let's call it player. All right. So if we go to our game, it's already in our view. So for now, I'm going to put this at 0, 0, 0. So if you leave the camera at the default position, right? So if you don't touch it, it should appear around the center of the screen, right? Which is actually what we want, right? So now I'm going to press W or click right here to be able to move our sphere here, which is going to be a player. I'm going to move it right here or around, yeah, something like this. Yeah, so this looks pretty decent. This is where we want to have our player. And let's also slightly move our camera. So head over to main camera. I'm going to move it up a little bit, just a bit. And then I'm going to press E or click here to rotate it. I'm going to also rotate it a little bit so we have a slightly better view of our player. Something like that. All right. Yeah, that looks pretty decent. Okay, so now let's head over to our player and add a click add component, rigid body. This will add gravity to our player, which we can instantly see if we click play right now. Look at what's going to happen. There we go. So our player is falling already. Great. So now we want to actually jump. So what we're going to do now is create a folder, call this scripts. And then here we're going to again right click, create, go to scripting and click mono behavior script. All right. I'm going to call this player controller, and this is going to handle our jumping logic. Okay, so now our script created. The first thing I'm going to do is remove these annoying comments. So let me do that. Okay, so now I'm going to create a rigid body variable. I'm going to call this RB. Okay, so on start, by the way, this function start gets called when the game starts, right? It gets called once. I'm going to do RB equals RB equals get component rigid body. Okay, so what it's going to do is basically grab the rigid body component from our player, right? Now I'm going to head over to update. I'm going to do if keyboard, right? Make sure, by the way, you add using Unity Engine input system. This is important. So keyboard current space key what's pressed this frame. So basically what this is doing is checking if we press the space key. Okay, that's all that is doing. Right. Next, we're going to actually make our player jump. So for this, I'm going to actually define a variable here. Going to be float jump height, like so. So this is basically going to define the height of our jump. Right. We're actually going to come over here and add serialized field here. So what this does, it exposes this value in the inspector, which we're going to actually see later. So we can easily tweak our jump height, okay? So now we're going to head back over here and actually make our player jump. So we're going to do rb.linear velocity equals new vector 2. I'm going to do rb.linear velocity.x, comma, jump height. There we go. So again, we're just adding velocity to a rigid body. And on the y-axis, we're adding our jump height, which will make our player jump. So let's check that out. So we're going to head right back into Unity. We're going to go over to our player, and I'm going to click Add Component. Okay. I'm going to look for our player controller here, which right here. Click that. So we add this script to our player. And as you can see, we have our jump height right here in our inspector. So I'm going to try and put this to, let's say, 8 or something. And I'm going to click play. And let's see what we get here. Alright, awesome. When I press space now, our player is jumping exactly as we want to. Perfect. Okay, so now with our player jumping, let's create our tube. So I'm going to head over to our hierarchy, click right click, create empty. I'm going to call this tube. And then I'm going to place this at 0, 0, 0 for now. Oops. There we go. Then I'm going to right click under here and click tree object. And then I'm going to click cylinder. Okay. So I'm going to scale this up a bit. So I'm going to do maybe 3 by 3 and then the height something like 5. Alright, let's do 4. Okay, there we go. And what I'm going to do is actually duplicate this. Okay, actually first, this is very important. So make sure that you remove the collider from this. So that's going to be very important. So click remove component. There we go. So we don't want to add our colliders just yet. What I'm going to do is then Ctrl D to duplicate this. Alright, select it, Ctrl D. Now I'm going to make this 1 on the Y, and then I'm going to make this 4 by 4. I'm going to place this right above our tube here. That way we can have a nice little tube shape. So just like that. There we go. Okay, so that looks a bit better already. So what I'm going to do now is let's create some materials which are going to make our player and our tube look a bit nicer. So we're going to add some color. Okay, so I'm going to create a folder, call it materials. In this folder, I'm going to go right click, create rendering, and then click material. There we go. I'm going to call this one player. So this is going to be for our player. So I'm going to go over to this color here. I'm going to make this a bit yellow. Give this a yellowish tint. All right, like that. And then I'm going to just drag this right onto our player. It's that easy to assign a material. I'm also going to increase the smoothness a bit. There we go, maybe 2.8. There we go, and that's it for our player. Now I'm going to do the same thing. So right click, create, rendering, material. I'm going to call this tube. All right. And now I'm going to give this a green color. So something like this. Again, make it, right, I'm going to assign it first. So I'm going to assign it to both of the objects, like so. I'm going to maybe also make it a little bit metallic. There we go. Looks pretty nice. Okay. So there we go. We got our tube now. So let's actually do one more thing. So if you go to our game view, we can, oh wait, let's actually drag this down a bit. Okay. So now in our game view, you can see, I mean, it looks flat on top. So let's do one quick little trick here. So I'm going to go over here, hit Ctrl D. I'm going to drag this up. I'm going to put the Y to something like 0.1. Actually, even less, maybe 0.05. Then I'm going to make this 3 by 3. Like so. I'm going to drag this right above our actual tube here. There we go, like so. And then I'm gonna copy this, and I'm gonna make it completely black. Alright, actually not completely, something like this, like a dark, very dark gray, and there we go. That looks a lot better. So now it looks like there's actually a hole in our tube, right? So, I mean, this is not the best way to do it, right? You probably want to model it in Blender or something, but, you know, just to have something going here, this will do the job for now, okay? So that's one of our tubes created, okay? So what I'm going to do now is head over to our assets, make a folder, call this prefabs, and then I'm going to drag this right in. So that way we can use this as some kind of, as a blueprint to use it later on, which we'll do right away, because what I want to do now is actually create tube variations, right? So I'm going to click create empty. I'm going to call this tube variation 1. All right, I'm going to put this again at 0, 0, 0. All right. So now what I'm going to do is drag this tube under this one, okay? Like so. And I'm going to, let's see here. So I'm going to duplicate this one, okay? Drag it up and I want to rotate this 180 degrees. So let's see here. So on the z-axis, we want to put 180. There we go. So now it's rotated. And now, okay, let's make sure that it's 0 on the x. Okay, there we go. So now I want to also move this on the y. So I'm going to do something like 3 maybe. Okay, so I think that 2 should be fine. There we go. So that's pretty, right? So there we go. Now what I'm going to do is actually copy this. So hit Control D. So we're going to head back over to our scene. Hit Control D on this. There we go. And now we're just going to create subtle variations. So for example, this one, I'm going to drag it up a little bit like this. There we go. And then create another one, which will drag down a little bit. There we go. That should be good for now. So yeah, something like that. Oh, okay. So I'm also going to wait. Let me quickly rename these. So let's call this 2 variation 2 and then 2 variation 3. There we go. So now I'm gonna make also make prefabs out of all of these scheme objects. So like this. All right, just drag them in here, and now we have our 2 variations. So okay, one really important thing we have to do here. So let's disable these for now. We don't really need them anymore. What we're gonna do is make sure you come over here and make sure they're all set to 0 on the x-axis. That's going to be very important because we're going to spawn them in a bit. So if they're not 0 on the x-axis, they might spawn in a weird position. So that's very, very important to put them all on 0 on the x, okay? So now what we're going to do is actually spawn our tubes. So let's head over to our scripts, right click, create scripting mono behavior script. I'll call this tube spawner, like so. Let's open this up. Okay, so let me start by removing the comments real quick, like so. So in here we're gonna add a array of game object. So there we go, game object. We're going to call this cubes. So this is basically going to be a collection of cubes, right? And make sure to add serialized field because we want to be able to assign this to the inspector. Also going to create a transform here, and it's going to be the spawn point of our tube. So this is where we're going to spawn our tubes. Then we're also going to create a spawn threshold. So this is basically going to be when the last spawn cube gets to this position, we're going to spawn a new tube, okay? So, all right, let's start what we're going to do is instantiate tubes. I'm going to say random dot range. I'm going to say 0 tubes dot length. So what it's going to do is basically going to pick a random tube from our collection, right? So we're basically generating a random number, which is going to, we're basically picking a random tube from our array. So then we want to instantiate this at our spawn point. There we go. Okay, so now what we're going to do on update, we're going to do, lastly, we also want to add a game object, call this last spawn cube, and then we're going to set this equal to last spawn cube. Okay, now in update, we're going to do if last spawn cube dot position dot transform dot position dot x is smaller than spawn threshold dot transform dot position dot x. So then we're going to last spawn tube equals instantiate tube random. We're gonna just copy this basically. There we go. Okay, so that's it for our tube spawning logic. Okay, so now one more thing we have to do is actually make sure our tubes are moving when we spawn them. So we're gonna head over to scripts, right click, create scripting, more behavior script, and we're gonna call this tube mover. Okay, let's open up our script. Okay, so now our tube mover script created. Let's remove the comments real quick. All right. Okay, so I'm going to create a float called tube movement speed. I'm also going to make this a serialized field, so that way we can edit this through our inspector, which is what we want. We'll remove the start function, we don't need it right now. And then in update, I'm going to do transform.position minus equals new vector tree. We're going to do tube movement speed 0, 0. And then times time dot time. Okay, so what we're basically doing here is moving our tubes to the left. So the reason we're doing minus here is basically because we're moving our tubes from right to left. So we're basically going to reduce the x position, right, to move it to the left. And we're also doing times time at delta time. So that way it's going to have consistent movement despite the frame rate, okay? Because otherwise it's going to depend on the frame rate. With time at delta time, it basically normalizes it to the frame rate. Okay, so what I'm also going to do is if transform dot position dot x is smaller than minus 50, I'm just going to destroy the tube. So destroy game object. So again, if our tube, so we're going to put the script on our tube. So if the position of our tube on the x is less than minus 50, which means that it's gone off screen, we're just going to destroy this game object, so that way we don't have a crazy amount of tubes in our scene at the same time, right? First things first, let's actually add our collider to our tube because we haven't done that yet. So let's head over to the tube prefab. Make sure you head over to this one, not the other ones, the individual tube. Click add component, box collider, and now click this button right here so we can actually tweak this collider and move it how you want to. So let's move this bottom part down like so, and there we go. And then this upper part we also have to move it down a little bit, so that should be mostly aligned with our tube, so that looks fine. It doesn't have to be completely perfect, but just for the most part. And then we can come over to our size, and we can just increase the x to like 4 or something, and then you z to 4. Okay, that's a bit much, so let's actually do 3.5 by 3.5. There we go. So that's going to do the job. All right, perfect. So that's our colliders added. So now if we come over to our tube variations, as you can see, we have colliders on our tube. Awesome, on our tubes. Okay, so now on our tube variations, what we actually want to do is add this tube mover script, okay? So let's just, for now, give this maybe a movement speed of 5. Okay, and then let's just do that for all our tubes here, or rather tube variations, okay? So add this, okay. There we go, awesome. So with that done, make sure that all your prefabs are saved as well. So with that done, we're going to right click, create empty. We're going to call this tube spawner. So I'm going to put this at 0, 0, 0, but it doesn't really matter because this is using a be for our script. So now I'm going to click add component, tube spawner, right? And here I'm actually going to drag in all these tubes in tube variations, I guess, right? So you can just drag them in like that, okay? And then I'm going to make a spawn point. So I'm going to create another empty. I'm going to call this tube spawn point, like so. I'm going to also put this at 0, 0, 0. I'm going to drag it out of it. So I think something like this. It can actually be out of the view. That's completely fine. So something like here seems fine. Then I'm also going to copy this. So Ctrl V. And I'm going to do tube spawn threshold Okay, and move this a little bit to the left, so something like this. But we can always tweak this whenever we want. Okay, so now on our tube spawner, I'm gonna add the tube spawn point and the threshold. Okay, so let's play our game now. Let's see what we have here. Okay, so it is working, but as you can see, I have some issues here that our tubes are way too close to each other. So let's tweak a few things here. So first off, let's move our spawn point. Oh no, sorry, our threshold. Let's move it further away and see what we get now. Okay, that's better. But I feel like there are not that many tubes on screen at the same time, so I probably want to tweak that a bit. So what I'm actually going to do is head over to the main camera, move it just a little bit back, like so. I'm also going to move our player to the left a bit. There we go. Something like this. There we go. And then I'm going to select my tube spawner, my tube spawn point and my tube spawn threshold. We're going to move them a little bit back, like so. So now let's hit play and see what we get. Okay, so that's quite a bit better. There we go. So another thing we want to fix is our player is jumping too much. So let's head over to our player and reduce our jump by to maybe 6. So for now, that should be a lot better. But again, later we might tweak this some more if we want to improve our game. But for now, this is not too bad. Okay. Yeah, that's not too terrible enough. All right, awesome. So, but again, now when we hit our tube, nothing's happening, right? So we want something to happen. Okay. So let's set that up now. So let's head over to our scripts. In here, I'm gonna right-click, create scripting. Again, I'm gonna be in the script, and I'm gonna call this game manager. Okay, so now our game manager script is created. The first thing I'm gonna do is remove the annoying comments. I'm also going to remove the update function, which we don't need. So first thing I'm going to do here is just do public void game over. So this function is going to get called when it's game over. And what I'm going to do is scene manager dot load scene, and I'm going to put 0, which is going to be our our current level, right? So basically you have an index of your open scenes, right? But we're in the default scene right now, so ours is going to be 0 by default. So this is basically going to restart our level, okay? Okay, so now let's head back into our player controller. So actually, we want to grab a reference to our game manager. So to do that, we're going to head over here, serialize field. Again, we want to do it through our inspector. We're going to do game manager. There we go. Game manager as well. Perfect. Okay, so with that done, what we're going to do is head down, and then here we're going to do on collision enter. So this is very important that you type it the exact same way, otherwise it's not going to work, because this basically detects when we collide with a collider. Okay, so here we're going to do if collision dot game object dot tag equals obstacle. Okay, and then if that's the case, so basically here we're checking if we hit an obstacle, so that could be our cube or it could be the ground. And then we're going to do game manager dot game over dot game over. So we're calling our game over function. Okay, awesome. Let's head back into our editor. Okay. So in the editor, what we're going to do is head over to our prefabs, go to our tube, make sure you select the individual tube. And here we want to head over to tag, and then we want to click add tag, and then here we want to click this plus icon, and we're going to call it obstacle as well. So it's very important that you write it the exact same way as in the script, otherwise it's not going to work. So if you have a typo, it will not work. So this is very important to write it properly. All right, click save. So again, now we're going to go to our back to our tube prefab, and then in here we're going to click tag and click obstacle. Okay, we're going to assign the obstacle tag we just created. So this is a very important step. So now we're basically tagging our cube as an obstacle. Okay, what I'm going to do next is create an empty game object. I'm going to call this ground obstacle. I'm going to put this to 0, 0, 0 for now. And then I'm going to drag this around our player. I'm going to drag it down a bit. So this is basically going to be the ground. So if the player goes there, it's also going to be game over, right? So we want this to be pretty low, something like this. Then I'm going to click Add Component, Box Collider. Now I'm going to click this icon to resize the collider a bit. I'm going to make it a bit bigger, right? So again, if the player hits this, then it's going to also be game over. So let's make this a little bit bigger, like so. Yeah, that should be more than enough. And then I'm also going to put the tag obstacle on here, okay? Because again, we also want this to be an obstacle. Okay, now I'm going to hit Control D so that I'm going to copy this, and then I'm going to move this one up. So maybe right here. So again, high enough, because if the player hits this, it's going to be game over. Okay, now lastly, I also want to create our game manager. We haven't put the script yet on anything. So I'm going to create empty, call this game manager. And then on here, I'm going to click Add Component, Game Manager. There we go. So that's going to be our game manager. I'm going to actually drag this up a bit so that way it's close to our player, so we know that this is our script. Okay. And then in our player, we added this serialized field for our game manager. So I'm going to drag our game manager in here so that our player has a reference to our game manager. Okay, awesome. So now I'm going to click play and let's see what happens. Okay, so I'm going to hit a tube to see what happens here. All right, perfect. It's reloading our level. That's exactly what we want. So let's fall. Okay, if we fall, it also reloads. So let's go to... All right, perfect. So that's working completely as expected, right? So if we hit a tube, it's going to reload our level. That's... Okay, there we go. Perfect. Okay, so the next step is to add a score. But for this, we're going to actually add a UI so that you can actually see your score in the game, right? So what we're going to do now is right-click in our hierarchy, go to UI. Make sure you click UI Canvas. We don't want to go to UI Toolkit. That's a different workflow. So go to UI Canvas and then click Canvas. There we go. So we're gonna, so now we have our canvas. So in here, what we want to do is right-click, go to UI, again, UI Canvas, and then we want to do here text Mesh Pro. So click that. I'm going to call this score. Okay, so when you add a text Mesh Pro text, this pop-up is going to come up. So what you want to do here is simply click Import TMP Essentials. So you have to do this to be able to use text Mesh Pro. Okay, that's perfect. That's what we need. So I'm going to call this score counter. All right, so there it is. So it just appeared on my canvas. So I actually want to click this 2D button here so I can properly have a look at my canvas, like so. Perfect. Okay, so I'm going to drag this to the corner here. And what I'm going to do is put this value to 0, okay? For now, I'm also going to center this. So click right here and here, so that way it's centered. I'm going to make this a bit smaller, like so. I also want the color to be fully white. Okay, no, it actually is fully white. All right, good. So now I want to hit Control D. So I'm going to duplicate this. I'm going to call this score text, like so. I'm going to put this next to it, and here I'm just going to put score semicolon. Okay, I'm going to make this a bit bigger so it fits in there. There we go. So score semicolon. And there we go. So that's going to be our score counter. Okay. Also going to make this one a bit bigger because our score might increase quite a bit. So there we go. That way it fits in. So that's the setup for our score. And then I'm also going to set up our height score while we're at it. So I'm going to actually I'm going to select both of these, right click, create empty parent. So I'm going to call this score. And then I'm going to hit Control D on this. And I'm going to call this height score. Okay, awesome. So now I'm going to drag this down. Okay. And I'm going to go to my score counter and rename this to high score counter. I'm going to do the same with the score text, rename this to high score text. Okay, and then all we're going to do is, in the high score text, I'm going to rename this to, I'm going to make sure it's high score. Alright, so that doesn't quite fit, so I'm going to make this a bit bigger, like so. Perfect. So I'm going to try and align this with our score. I mean, it doesn't have to be perfect, right? Okay, so perfect. Now we have our score and our high score UI. So now we actually want to be able to, change our score, right? Alright, so now let's head back to our game manager. So in our game manager, I'm going to first grab a reference to our score text. So I'm going to do text mesh pro GUI. I know it's a pretty weird name, but that's how we get a reference to our text. And then we're going to do call this for text. Make sure it's a serialized field so that we can inject this to the inspector. And then we're going to do the same here for our high score text. Okay, great. Now I'm going to also create two variables. So one for score, so int score equals 0, and then also we're going to do int high score. All right. So now what we're going to do is create a function. So public void increase score. So this is when we get tree a cube. We're going to do score plus plus, right? So this is basically going to add 1 to our score. That's all this is doing. Okay. So then what we're going to do is if on game over, if our score is greater than our high score, we're going to basically save our score. So in that case, what we're going to do is high score equals score, and then we're going to do player prefs dot set int. Okay, so player prefs is basically an easy way to save certain variables. Okay, so and we have to put a key. So the key is going to be high score, right? So we're going to pull this high score, and as a value, we're going to put our high score. But make sure that you assign your score to your high score first, right? Or otherwise, you can just assign your score. That's it doesn't really matter. Okay. So all right. So then when the game starts, so in our start function, what we're going to do high score equals player prefs dot get int. Again, make sure that you use the exact same key. So I'm going to actually copy this so there's no typo. And there we go. So what this is going to do is when the game starts, it's going to try and get this high score key, right? Get this int. And if it gets it, it will assign it to our high score, okay? And if it doesn't, it will just be 0. So that's exactly what we want, okay? Oh yeah, and before I forget, we also want to update our UI. So here, what we're going to do is set our score text. So do score text dot text equals score dot toString. So again, this is text. So text would be a string, while our score is a number, so an integer. So we want to convert this number to string, to text, right? So that's what we're doing right here, and then assigning it to our UI, right? And also on start, what we're going to do is high score text dot text. We want to set this to high score dot toString. So again, make sure that you load the high score first, and then you can set the UI. And then one more thing. So let's set to our player controller. So in our player controller, what I want to do is I want to add a function. So on trigger enter. So again, this is very similar to on collision enter, but the difference is that on collision enter will be an actual collider, which you can actually collide with, so your player can go through it, right? A trigger will not actually have you collide. It will just trigger when you go through it. So it's like a collider, but it won't actually have physics, but when you go through it, it will fire this event, which I'll show you in a bit. So if we're gonna do if other dot game object dot tag equals, we're gonna do score trigger, and then we're going to do game manager dot increase score. There we go. Okay, so now let's head back to Unity. Alright, so let's head first to our game manager. So let's assign this score text and this high score text. So let's head back to our canvas. So I'm gonna drag in the score counter and then the high score counter. So make sure you grab the counter again. That's what we want. We want the actual score, right? So make sure you drag that into game manager. And one last thing I want to do is head to our tube variations. Then here I'm gonna create a empty game object. Call this score trigger. Okay, I'm gonna put this at 0, 0, 0. There we go. Then I'm gonna click add component, box collider. Then I'm gonna actually edit this collider, so make this basically the gap between our tubes, like so. Okay. Oh, oops. There we go. All right, and then I'm going to go to tag, add tag, click the plus button, call this score trigger. Again, be very careful you don't have any typos. Click save. Then on our score trigger, I'm going to assign this tag here, score trigger. Okay. So again, oh yeah, and then last thing, very important. Make sure you check the checkbox is trigger. So again, the difference is if this would not be a trigger, if our player collides with this, it will not go through because our player also has a collider, so it will not be able to pass through. But with a trigger, it can actually pass through, but we can still know when our player goes inside, so it will trigger still. Okay, that's why it's called a trigger. Okay, so I'm going to quickly do this for our remaining tube variations. So I'm going to quickly speed it up. All right, so with that done, let's click play and see what happens. All right, so let's see if our score increases when we go between our tubes. And yeah, so it does. Perfect. Okay. So, okay, there it is. And our high score remains the same. So when we die, we'll actually save our high score. So let's try and beat our high score here. It's not easy. All right. Oh, there we go. So I beat the high score. And there it is. So it saved our high score. That's it. So that's basically Flappy Bird. All right. So that's the game. So yeah, that's basically Flappy Bird. So if you got this far, congratulations. So one last thing I'm going to do is actually tweak the visuals. I'm going to make it look nice now. But again, the core gameplay is here. So now the last step is to actually make it look a bit nicer. Okay, so these are the assets I'm going to use. So Sparrow Quirky series. So I'm going to put the link in the description. And then also Fantasy Skybox 3. So again, I'll put the link in the description. Okay, so I'm going to head back to Unity. So in here, I'm going to go to my package manager. So if you do not have the package manager window, head over to window, and then go to package management and then click package manager. So that will open the window. So let's head over to my assets and I'm going to just quickly import them. So I'm going to speed these up. Okay, so now your assets imported. Let's try and make the game a bit prettier. So first thing I'm going to do is go to the lightning window. So if you don't have it, you can go to window, rendering, and then go to lightning. So I'm going to go to the environment tab right here. And here, as you can see, there is a box for Skybox material. So I'm going to head over to our to the Skybox. We just imported. So I'm going to go to cube maps here. Yeah. So I mean, you can choose any Skybox you want. So I'm going to just put this one in. There we go. Actually, maybe yeah, that's not bad. I mean, let's try this. Let's see. Okay, maybe this one. All right. Yeah, that's not too bad. So yeah, sure. Oh, actually, yeah, this one is pretty good. Okay, so now that's done, let's add in our birds. So I'm going to assets. So this asset import two folders, but we want this one. We want to go to the prefabs here, and it's going to be pink right now. So we can easily fix it. So we're going to head over to materials. go to this material. So it's using some shader that's not working, but all we have to do is click here, go to universal render pipeline, then click lit. Now click this lock icon because we're going to drag in texture. And then we're going to head over to textures and then drag this in right here into the base map. Okay, so that should fix that. So now we can head over to our prefabs, drag this guy in, right? Also, make sure you exit 2D mode because otherwise, you're not going to be able to see anything in the scene view. So let's put this guy at 0, 0, 0. So one thing I'm going to do is expand this and delete these meshes. Right, we don't actually want to be using lots. I'm going to actually delete this lot group. There we go. So lots basically allow you to optimize your performance. So if you're further away, it's going to use a lower quality model. But in this case, we just don't want that, right? So I'm going to remove that. So now let's rotate our bird 90 degrees. So I'm going to put 90 here on the Y. There we go. And then I'm going to just put the bird in the exact same place as our circle here. But I'm going to scale it up a bit, so maybe 2. So I'm going to click this icon so it locks the scale, and then I'm going to put 2. So that's a bit much. I'm going to do maybe 1.5. Yeah, 1.5 seems about right. Okay. Yeah, that should do the job. Alright. Maybe 1.4 actually. Okay. We can actually leave the collider on the bird. I mean, it's a capsule collider, but that's fine. And then I want to obviously add a rigid body. And then I also want to add the player controller. Okay, that's very important, otherwise it's not going to work. I'm going to put this jump height again to 6 and then also drag in the game manager. Okay, so now I can disable our other player. So I'm going to call this player old and then I'm going to call this Sparrow player. Okay. Alright, and one last thing I want to do. So by default, this Sparrow has an animator. So I'm going to head over to this animator. So here we have a bunch of animations, but we only want to play one. So we want to play the fly animation at all times. So all you have to do is right click here and then click set as default state. There we go. Let's hit play now and see what we have. Alright, great, that's working. So the bird seems a little bit floaty. So what I'm going to do is actually go to our player and make the mass a little bit more, so maybe 1.4 or something. There we go. Now one other thing, our UI is not set up that well. So so basically we want to let's tweak our UI a bit so it looks a little bit better and it's actually centered. So let's go back into 2D. Let's head over to our canvas or square. So what I'm going to do is actually remove this score text. I'm going to put the score counter in the middle. Okay, actually, let's just put this in the middle of our score here, and then I'm going to put this in the middle right here. Okay, so there we go. Let's center this, and then I'm going to make this quite a bit bigger, so maybe something like 60 or even 80. Okay, there we go. And make this a bit bigger as well. There we go. Like so. Okay. So put that right here, and then I'm gonna actually take the height score and put that right here. Okay. So let's try and center this somewhat. So I'm gonna go here. Something like this. Okay, yeah, that looks better. Okay, and then lastly, I want to go over here and anchor this to the top center here as well. Click here, so it's anchored to the top center. Okay, perfect. And then one more thing I want to do is head over. So go out of 2D. Head over to our tube spawn point and our threshold. So select both at the same time. And I actually want to move both of them a little bit to the right. So, okay, let's try this out. So let's hit play. So now if I put the game in full screen, there we go. So we have no popping. So if it's too close, you might see the pipes spawning, right? But now it's working exactly as intended. There we go. And our UI is also centered. So perfect. That's Flappy Bird for you in 3D. So hope you enjoyed the video. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe. See you next time.